This is HOA mess. She called it fire lane, and I called it a lie. I am standing in the visitor parking row of Copper Canyon Estates in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, holding my guest permit in one hand and my work gloves in the other, and Janet Davis is telling the tow driver to drop the wheel lift and take me anyway. "You are making this worse for yourself," she says, waving her clipboard with colored tabs like it is a badge of office, and I can feel my jaw tighten, because I know exactly what she is doing. The tow truck is idling 10 feet behind my car, amber lights flashing across the pavement, and the driver is looking at me, then at Janet, then back at me like he is trying to figure out who is going to pay him. I work as a Veteran Affairs Benefits counselor, which means I live by paperwork, and I know when someone is trying to rewrite the rules in real time. Janet is the communications director for the Copper Canyon Estates Association, which means she controls the email blasts and the group chat, and she has been using that power to turn this neighborhood into a place where normal life becomes a parking violation. The stakes for me are simple and brutal. I am trying to keep my home insurance stable, and the HOA is pushing me toward a claim by manufacturing violations that could flag my property as high risk. Janet steps closer, and I can see the white baseball cap pulled low over her black chin-length bob, the purple light jacket zipped up even though the harsh afternoon sun is turning the asphalt into a griddle. She taps the clipboard against her thigh. "I have all day, and so does my fine meter," she says, and I recognize the line because she has said it twice before, once when she cited me for a faded guest pass, and once when she tried to fine me for parking too close to a curb that did not have a painted line. The tow driver shifts his weight and glances at his phone. "Lady," he says, "if he has a permit, I need authorization in writing." Janet does not even look at him. She points at a sign 20 yards away, a metal post with a laminated notice that I have never seen before today. "That sign went up last week," she says. "No guest parking after 72 hours without board approval. He has been here 4 days. I shake my head, because I moved my car 2 days ago and came back yesterday, and the guest pass I am holding has yesterday's date printed on it in blue ink." The driver squints at the permit in my hand, then looks back at Janet. "Ma'am, that says yesterday." Janet's mouth tightens. "The system logs the vehicle, not the date," she says, and I know she is making that up because the guest pass system does not log anything beyond a handwritten date and a signature. The driver scratches his neck. "I am going to need something official," he says, and Janet pulls out her phone like she is about to make a call that will end this debate. I watch her dial, and I know exactly who she is calling because she has done this before. She is calling the property management company, not to ask permission, but to create a paper trail that makes it look like she had authorization all along. The driver leans against the side of his truck, arms crossed, and I can tell he is getting paid either way, so he does not care how this ends. A couple on a porch 2 houses down is watching us like we are a streaming show. The woman holding a coffee mug and the man leaning on the railing with his arms folded. Janet puts the phone to her ear and turns her back to me, and I hear her say, "This is Janet Davis, communications director for Copper Canyon. I need a tow authorization for a vehicle in violation of the 72-hour rule." I pull out my own phone and open the camera app, because if she is going to lie, I am going to record it. The driver notices and raises an eyebrow, but he does not say anything. Janet listens for a moment, then nods. "Yes, the sign is posted," she says. "It has been up for a week." I know that is a lie, because I walked this lot 3 days ago and there was no sign. She hangs up and turns back to the driver with a smile that does not reach her eyes. "You are authorized," she says. "Hook it." The driver looks at me, and I hold up the guest permit again. "This was issued yesterday," I say, keeping my voice level even though I want to shout. The sign she is talking about was not there when I parked. The driver shrugs. "Look, man, I just do what the HOA tells me. If you have a problem, you take it up with them." He walks to the back of the truck and pulls a tow strap off the bed, the heavy nylon uncoiling with a rough scraping sound. Janet steps between me and the truck, clipboard held like a shield. "You had your chance to comply," she says. "Now you pay the tow fee and the storage fee and the late notice fee, and maybe next time you will read the rules." I feel the heat rising in my chest, the same tight anger I get when someone tries to bury me in procedural nonsense, and I force myself to stay calm because I know timing is the whole weapon. I acted like I was backing down, because I was not going to blow my trump card in the middle of a parking lot, with a tow driver who did not care and a communications director who thought she had already won. The driver loops the strap under my front bumper, and I watch the hook clang against the asphalt, the sound sharp and final. Janet folds her arms and tilts her head, and I can see the satisfaction in her eyes, the same look she had when she sent out the email blast 2 weeks ago, announcing a crackdown on parking violations. That email was the first time I realized she was weaponizing the tow contract to make the tow company act first and ask questions never. The driver cranks the winch, and the strap tightens with a low grinding sound, the front of my car lifting an inch off the ground. I step back and lower my phone, making sure the angle captures Janet's face and the tow strap, and the guest permit still in my other hand. The couple on the porch is still watching, and the woman raises her phone like she is filming too. Janet notices and her smile falters for half a second, but she recovers fast. "This is an HOA matter," she calls out to them. "Please respect the process." The man on the porch does not move, and the woman keeps her phone up. I lower my phone and look at Janet. "How much is the tow fee?" I ask, and she does not miss a beat. $250 base plus $75 for the first day of storage, plus a $50 administrative fee for expedited processing. I do the math in my head. $375 for a car that was legally parked with a valid permit. That is theft, I say, and Janet shakes her head like I am a child who does not understand how the world works. That is compliance, she says. You agreed to the parking rules when you bought your home. I want to tell her that I agreed to rules that were published and consistent, not rules that appear overnight on signs no one approved, but I know arguing in the street is not going to change anything. The driver pulls a yellow receipt pad from his pocket and starts writing, his pen scratching across the paper in the silence between us. Janet taps her clipboard. You can pick it up at the yard tomorrow, she says. Cash or card, no checks. The front of my car is now a full 6 inches off the ground, the wheel lift locked in place, and I can feel the moment slipping away. I need to make a decision fast because the tow truck is already in the neighborhood and the driver says the hook goes on in minutes, and once the car is on that truck, I am paying $375 whether I am right or not. I pull out my phone again and open my email app, scrolling through the screenshots I've been saving for 2 weeks. Janet watches me with narrowed eyes. What are you doing? She says, and I do not answer because I am looking for the message thread from the HOA group chat, the one where she coordinated this whole thing. I find it and tap the screen, pulling up a screenshot of Janet's message from last Thursday. Target enforcement wave this weekend, she wrote. Guest parking is the priority. I have the tow vendor on standby. Another board member replied, do we need to post notice first? And Janet responded, we will handle it. I hold the phone up so the driver can see. She planned this, I say. She coordinated a targeted enforcement wave without posting the required notice or giving homeowners time to comply. The driver glances at the screen, then looks at Janet, then shrugs again. I just tow cars, man. This is between you and the HOA. Janet steps forward and reaches for my phone like she is going to take it, but I pull it back. Do not touch me, I say, and she stops, her hand frozen in the air between us. The driver clears his throat. Folks, I need to move this along. Either I am taking the car or I am not. Janet drops her hand and straightens her clipboard. You are taking it, she says, and the driver nods and walks back to the truck cab. I watch him climb in and reach for the controls, and I know I have about 10 seconds before this becomes a done deal. I tap my phone screen again and pull up the contact for my neighbor Marcus, the one who has been helping me document this mess. I type fast. Need drone footage now. Visitor lot. Send it to the group chat. I hit send and shove the phone back in my pocket, and Janet watches me with a tight smile. Texting your lawyer, she asks, and I shake my head. Just a neighbor, I say, and her smile widens because she thinks I am bluffing. The truck engine revs, and the wheel lift starts to pull my car backward, the tires dragging across the asphalt with a low scraping sound. I step to the side and let it happen, because fighting a tow driver in the middle of the street is not going to help, and I need Janet to think she won. The couple on the porch is still watching, and the woman has lowered her coffee mug, her face tight with concern. The man says something I cannot hear, and she nods. The truck pulls my car into the street, the wheel lift fully extended now, and the driver shifts into drive. Janet crosses her arms and tilts her head. You should have just followed the rules, she says, and I look at her without saying anything because I know what is coming next. My phone buzzes in my pocket, and I pull it out to see a message from Marcus. Got it. Uploading now. I open the attachment and watch the video load, an overhead view of the visitor parking lot from this morning. My car clearly visible in a legal space with a guest permit on the dashboard. The timestamp is right there in the corner, and the video shows no sign anywhere near my car. I save the video and forward it to myself 3 times, then look up at Janet. You said the sign was posted last week, I say, and she nods. It was. I hold up my phone. This is drone footage from this morning. There is no sign. Janet's face goes pale, and she grabs for my phone again, but I step back. The tow truck is 20 yards down the street now, my car hanging off the back like a trophy, and I can see the driver looking in his side mirror. Janet recovers fast, her face hardening again. That footage is inadmissible, she says. You cannot fly drones over private property without permission. I shake my head. The parking lot is common area, I say. And Marcus got his drone license last year, so it is completely legal. Janet taps her clipboard against her thigh again, harder this time, and I can see the colored tabs fluttering. You are making this worse for yourself, she says, and I recognize the line from earlier, but this time it sounds weaker. I shrug. Maybe, I say. Or maybe I am making it worse for you. The driver stops the truck at the corner and leans out the window. Lady, do you still want me to take this? He calls back, and Janet hesitates for the first time since this started. Yes, she says, but her voice is quieter now. I watch the truck turn the corner and disappear behind a row of townhouses, and I feel the tight knot in my chest loosen just a little, because I know the next 48 hours are going to decide whether I keep my home or end up in a legal fight that could wreck my insurance and my finances. Janet turns and starts walking toward the HOA office, a small brick building at the end of the street, and I follow her, because I am not done. She glances back over her shoulder. "What do you want?" she says, and I keep my voice level. "I want the tow authorization in writing," I say. "And I want the board meeting minutes that approved the 72-hour rule." She stops walking and turns to face me, and I can see the calculation in her eyes, the same look she gets when she is deciding how much she can get away with. "Those are internal documents," she says. "You can request them in writing and we will respond within 30 days. I shake my head. "The bylaws say I can inspect records with 24 hours notice," I say. "And I gave notice 3 days ago." Janet's jaw tightens. "Your request was denied," she says. "You did not specify which documents you wanted." I pull out my phone again and open my email, scrolling to the message I sent on Monday. "I specifically requested all parking enforcement records from the last 6 months," I say. "That includes authorizations, board approvals, and vendor contracts." Janet does not answer, and I know I have her cornered. We reach the HOA office, and Janet pulls a key from her pocket and unlocks the front door. The office is small and cramped, with a desk piled high with file folders, a printer humming in the corner, and a bulletin board covered in notices and flyers. Janet drops her clipboard on the desk and turns to face me, arms crossed. "You have 5 minutes," she says, and I step inside and close the door behind me. "I want the tow contract," I say, and Janet shakes her head. "That is a vendor agreement," she says. "It is not a homeowner record." I pull out my phone and open the bylaws document I downloaded last month. Section 12, subsection 4, I say. "All vendor contracts that impact common area use must be available for homeowner inspection." Janet's face goes red, and she grabs a file folder from the desk and slams it down in front of me. "Fine," she says. "Read it and get out." I open the folder and start scanning the contract, and within 30 seconds I find what I am looking for. The tow authorization clause requires written board approval for each tow, and the approval must specify the violation and the vehicle. I pull out my phone and take a picture of the page, then flip to the next section. The contract also includes a penalty clause. If the HOA authorizes a tow without proper documentation, the HOA is liable for all fees and damages. I take another picture and look up at Janet. "Where is the written authorization for my car?" I ask, and she does not answer. I wait, watching her face cycle through anger and panic and calculation, and finally she pulls a folder from a drawer and hands it to me. "Here," she says, satisfied. I open the folder and see a blank form with Janet's signature at the bottom and today's date. The vehicle description line is empty. The violation line is empty. The only thing filled in is her signature and the words "approved by communications director." I take a picture of that too, and Janet snatches the folder back. "That is all you are getting," she says, and I nod because it is more than enough. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, hit that subscribe button, because it gets so much better. I leave the office and walk back to the visitor lot where Marcus is standing next to his truck with a tablet in his hand. He looks up when I approach and grins. "Got the footage uploaded," he says. "I sent it to the group chat like you asked." I nod and pull out my phone, opening the neighborhood chat to see the video already posted with a caption that reads, "No sign. This morning." HOA lied about posting notice. The replies are already coming in, neighbors asking questions and demanding answers, and I can see Janet's name mentioned 3 times in the first 10 messages. Marcus hands me the tablet. "I also got this," he says, and I look at the screen to see a wider shot of the parking lot. The timestamp showing last Thursday, the same day Janet sent the email about the enforcement wave. There is no sign in that footage either. I save the video to my phone and look at Marcus. "Thank you," I say, and he shrugs. "Someone has to keep these people honest," he says. I walk home and sit at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, and I start building the case. I have the drone footage showing no sign this morning. I have the group chat screenshots showing Janet coordinating the enforcement wave. I have the tow contract showing the authorization requirements. I have the blank authorization form with Janet's signature. And I have one more thing. The trump card I have been holding since last month. The police incident number from a prior HOA trespass attempt that shows a pattern. 3 weeks ago, Janet tried to enter my backyard to inspect my fence without notice, and when I asked her to leave, she refused. I called the police, and the officer who responded filed a report documenting her refusal to leave private property. The incident number is saved in my phone, and I have been waiting for the right moment to use it. That moment is now. I open a new email and start typing. The recipient list includes every homeowner email address I could find in the neighborhood directory, which is about 80% of the homes in Copper Canyon Estates. The subject line reads, HOA enforcement abuse and vendor contract violations. I attach the drone footage, the group chat screenshots, the tow contract photos, the blank authorization form, and the police report. The body of the email is short and factual. I explain what happened today, I cite the specific bylaw violations, and I include the police incident number to show this is not an isolated event. At the end I write, I will be attending the next board meeting to demand a full audit of the parking enforcement program and the vendor contracts. I encourage all homeowners to attend and ask questions. I hit send and close the laptop, and I feel the tight knot in my chest loosen a little more, because I know the power dynamic just shifted. The next morning, I wake up to 43 replies in my inbox. Most of them are supportive. Neighbors saying they have had similar problems with Janet and the parking enforcement. One woman saying she was fined $200 for a guest pass that was supposedly expired, even though she had renewed it the day before. A few replies are angry. People accusing me of stirring up trouble and making the neighborhood look bad, but those are in the minority. One reply stands out, a message from a board member named Richard who says he was never told about the enforcement wave and never approved the 72-hour rule. He asks if I can send him the full documentation, and I forward everything immediately. By noon, the group chat is on fire, neighbors demanding a special meeting and threatening to recall the board if they do not get answers. Janet posts a message saying the email was full of lies and misrepresentations, but no one is buying it. Someone replies with a screenshot of her own message from last Thursday about the enforcement wave, and she goes silent. The special meeting is scheduled for Friday night, 4 days away, and I spend those 4 days gathering more evidence. I file a formal complaint with the property management company, citing the contract violations and the blank authorization form. I request a full accounting of all towing fees collected in the last 6 months, and a list of all vehicles towed. The management company responds with a terse email saying they are reviewing the matter, but they do not provide any documents. I also reach out to the tow company directly and ask for a copy of the authorization they received for my vehicle. The dispatcher tells me they do not provide that information to vehicle owners, only to the entity that requested the tow, but she lets slip that the authorization came in as a phone call, not a written request. I document that conversation in an email to myself and add it to the evidence file. On Wednesday, 2 days before the meeting, I get a call from the property management company. The woman on the phone identifies herself as the regional manager, and her tone is carefully neutral. "Mr.," she says, using my last name, "we have reviewed your complaint, and we agree there were procedural issues with the tow authorization. We are prepared to refund the towing fees and waive any fines related to this incident." I lean back in my chair and stare at the ceiling, because I know what this is. They are trying to buy me off before the meeting. "How much?" I ask, and she pauses. $375, she says. "The full amount you paid to retrieve your vehicle." I shake my head even though she cannot see me. "What about the other homeowners who were towed under the same program?" I ask, and she does not answer right away. "We are reviewing those cases individually," she says. "I am only authorized to discuss your case." I tell her I will think about it and call her back, and I hang up before she can say anything else. That night, Janet posts a message in the group chat that is clearly aimed at me. Some residents seem determined to undermine the HOA's ability to enforce basic community standards, she writes. "I want to remind everyone that parking violations create safety hazards and lower property values. The board takes these matters seriously, and we will not be bullied into abandoning our responsibilities." The response is immediate and brutal. A dozen neighbors reply within minutes, calling her out for lying about the sign, for authorizing a tow without proper documentation, for ignoring the bylaws. One person writes, "You are not enforcing standards, you are harassing homeowners." Another writes, "I have lived here for 10 years, and I have never seen parking enforcement this aggressive. Resign." Janet does not reply, but I know she is reading every message because the group chat shows her as active. Thursday afternoon, I get another call, this time from a lawyer who identifies himself as the HOA's legal counsel. He tells me the board is willing to settle the matter privately, and he lists the terms: a full refund of the towing fees, a written apology from the board, and a commitment to review the parking enforcement policies. In exchange, I agree not to pursue any further legal action, and I withdraw my complaint to the management company. I listen to the whole pitch, and then I ask the question I have been waiting to ask. "Does the settlement include an audit of the vendor contracts?" I say, and he hesitates. "That is not part of the current offer," he says. I tell him I am not interested, and I hang up. The meeting is tomorrow night, and I am not settling for anything less than full transparency. Friday night, I arrive at the community center 20 minutes early, and the room is already half full. Marcus is there, sitting in the second row with his tablet, and he waves me over. I sit next to him and pull out my folder of documents, organizing them on my lap. Janet arrives 5 minutes later with the rest of the board, and she does not look at me as she takes her seat at the front table. The board president, a gray-haired man named Tom, calls the meeting to order and starts with the usual procedural business, approving last month's minutes and reviewing the budget. The room is restless, people shifting in their seats and whispering to each other, and I can tell everyone is waiting for the parking enforcement item on the agenda. Tom clears his throat and looks down at his notes. The next item is a homeowner complaint regarding parking enforcement procedures, he says. Mr., he uses my last name again, has requested time to address the board. I stand up and walk to the front of the room, and I can feel every eye on me. I place my folder on the table and look at the board members, 5 people sitting in a row with Janet in the middle. I start with the facts, walking through the timeline of what happened on Monday, the lack of posted notice, the blank authorization form, and the tow contract violations. I keep my voice level and factual, and I reference the specific bylaw sections for each point. Tom listens without interrupting, but Janet is shaking her head the whole time, her clipboard in her lap and her mouth pressed into a thin line. When I finish, Tom looks at Janet. Do you want to respond, he asks, and Janet stands up so fast her chair scrapes across the floor. This is a witch hunt, she says, her voice loud and sharp. This homeowner has been violating parking rules for months, and when we finally enforce them, he runs to his lawyer and tries to make us look like criminals. I did not say I have a lawyer, I say, and Janet ignores me. The sign was posted, she continues. I posted it myself last Wednesday. Multiple board members approved the 72-hour rule, and the tow was completely within our authority. I pull out my phone and hold up the drone footage. This was taken Thursday morning, I say. There is no sign. Janet's face goes red, and she points at the screen. That footage is fake, she says. Anyone can edit a video. Marcus stands up in the second row. I took that footage, he says. I am a licensed drone operator, and the timestamp is embedded in the file metadata. It cannot be faked without leaving traces. Janet turns to look at him, and I can see her trying to come up with a response, but nothing comes out. Tom raises his hand. Let's keep this civil, he says. Janet, did the board approve the 72-hour rule in a formal vote? Janet hesitates, and I can see the calculation in her eyes again. It was approved in executive session, she says. The minutes are confidential. Richard, the board member who emailed me earlier, stands up from his seat at the table. I was not told about any executive session, he says, and I never voted on a 72-hour rule. Tom looks at Janet, and the room goes silent. Janet sits down slowly, her clipboard still in her lap, and I can see her hands shaking. I step forward and place the folder on the table in front of Tom. I have documentation here that I would like entered into the meeting minutes, I say. It includes the tow contract, the authorization form, the drone footage, and a police incident report from last month. Tom opens the folder and starts flipping through the pages, and I watch his face go from neutral to concerned to angry. Where did you get this? He asks, and I tell him I requested the tow contract under the inspection of records bylaw, and Janet provided it. Tom looks at Janet. Is this your signature? He asks, holding up the blank authorization form. Janet does not answer. Tom closes the folder and looks at the rest of the board. I am calling for an immediate suspension of all parking enforcement pending a full audit, he says. We also need to review the vendor contract and determine whether it was properly approved. Janet stands up again. You cannot do that, she says. I have authority as communications director to manage enforcement. Tom shakes his head. You have authority to send emails, he says. You do not have authority to authorize tows without board approval. Janet grabs her clipboard and starts to walk toward the door, but Tom stops her. Sit down, he says. We are not done. Janet hesitates, and I can see the panic in her eyes now, the realization that she has lost control of the room. She sits back down, and the clipboard slips from her lap and hits the floor with a sharp crack. No one moves to pick it up. Tom continues, "I am also recommending that we bring in an independent property management consultant to review all of our enforcement policies," he says. "And I want a full accounting of every tow that has been authorized in the last year, including the fees collected and the authorization documentation." Janet stares at the table, and I can see her jaw working like she is trying to find the right words, but nothing comes out. A woman in the third row raises her hand. "I was towed last month," she says. "I had a valid guest pass, and they took my car anyway. I paid $400 to get it back, and no one ever explained why." Tom writes something down on his notepad. "Please see me after the meeting," he says. "We will review your case." 3 more people raise their hands, and I can see Tom's face getting darker. The meeting goes on for another hour, with homeowner after homeowner standing up to tell their own parking enforcement horror stories. A man says his visitor was towed 10 minutes after she arrived, even though she had just put a guest pass on the dashboard. A woman says she was fined for parking in her own driveway because the car was 6 inches over the property line. A couple says they were cited for a commercial vehicle, even though their truck was a standard pickup with no business markings. By the time Tom calls for a vote on the audit, the room is furious, and the vote is unanimous. Janet abstains, and Tom notes it in the minutes. The board also votes to suspend Janet's enforcement authority pending the audit results, and she stands up without a word and walks out of the room. The door slams behind her, and the room erupts in applause. I stay seated, my folder still on the table, and I watch Tom gather his notes. He looks at me and nods, and I nod back. After the meeting, Marcus and I walk out to the parking lot, and I can see Janet sitting in her car at the far end of the lot, her phone pressed to her ear. Marcus shakes his head. "She is calling someone," he says. "Probably her lawyer." I shrug. "Let her," I say. "The evidence is public now. Anything she does from here is just going to make it worse." We reach Marcus's truck, and he leans against the door. "You did good in there," he says. I shake my head. "I just showed them what they already knew," I say. "They were ready to hear it." Marcus grins. "Still," he says, "you buried her." I do not answer, because I know the real work is just starting. The audit is going to take weeks, and Janet is going to fight every step of the way. But I also know the board is finally paying attention, and that is enough for now. The audit starts the following Monday, and the consultant is a no-nonsense woman named Linda who shows up with a rolling file cart and a laptop. I meet with her on Tuesday afternoon and walk her through the entire timeline, providing copies of all my documentation. She listens without interrupting, taking notes on her laptop, and when I finish, she looks up and says, "You have a strong case." The HOA violated multiple sections of the governing documents, and the vendor contract appears to have been executed without proper board approval. I ask her how long the audit will take, and she says 4 to 6 weeks depending on how cooperative the board is. I thank her and leave, and I spend the next 2 weeks checking my email every hour for updates. The updates come in pieces. Linda emails me on Wednesday of the second week to say she has identified at least 15 tows that were authorized without proper documentation, and she is recommending that the HOA refund all fees and issue written apologies to the affected homeowners. She also says she found evidence that the tow vendor was given preferential treatment in the contract process, and she is recommending a budget review that reveals vendor favoritism. That phrase, budget review that reveals vendor favoritism is exactly what I have been waiting to hear, because it means the consultant has found the same pattern I suspected. The tow contract was signed without competitive bidding, and the fees were set higher than industry standard, which suggests someone on the board was benefiting from the arrangement. On Friday, Linda sends a draft of her report to the board, and by Monday morning the group chat is exploding again. Someone leaked portions of the report, and the details are damning. The two-vendor contract was signed by Janet without board approval. The 72-hour rule was never formally adopted. At least 20 homeowners were towed under false pretenses, and the total fees collected exceed $8,000. The board schedules an emergency meeting for Wednesday night, and I mark my calendar. Marcus texts me that afternoon. "You ready for round 2?" he asks, and I reply, "Always." Wednesday night, the meeting room is packed, standing room only, and I arrive early to get a seat in the front row. Janet is not there, and Tom announces at the start of the meeting that she has submitted her resignation effective immediately. The room erupts in applause again, and Tom waits for it to die down before continuing. "The board has reviewed the consultant's report," he says, "and we accept all of her recommendations. We will be refunding all towing fees, issuing written apologies, and terminating the current vendor contract. We will also be revising the parking enforcement policies to require written board approval for all tows. And we will be publishing standards and timelines to all homeowners so everyone knows what to expect." That phrase, publishing standards and timelines to all homeowners, is exactly what I pushed for, because it means the HOA will no longer be able to weaponize enforcement by keeping the rules vague and changing them without notice. Tom continues, "The board has also voted to issue a written warning for harassment behavior to the former communications director," he says, "and I feel a surge of satisfaction because that warning is going to follow Janet for as long as she lives in this neighborhood. If she tries to run for the board again, or if she tries to interfere with enforcement, that warning will be part of the public record." Tom looks directly at me. "I want to thank you for bringing this matter to our attention," he says. "Your diligence and documentation made this audit possible, and the board is committed to making sure nothing like this happens again." I nod, and the room applauds again, and I feel the tight knot in my chest finally loosen all the way. After the meeting, I walk out to the parking lot with Marcus, and we stand next to his truck under the streetlight. "You did it," he says. "You took down the whole enforcement program." I shake my head. "I just held them accountable," I say. "The program was corrupt from the start." Marcus grins. "Still," he says. "That was impressive." We talk for a few more minutes, and then I head home, driving slowly through the neighborhood and noticing for the first time in weeks that I am not looking for parking enforcement signs or checking my rearview mirror for tow trucks. The streets are quiet, just a normal suburban neighborhood on a Wednesday night, and I feel the weight of the last month lifting off my shoulders. The refund checks arrive 2 weeks later, a total of $8,000 distributed among 21 homeowners. I get my $375, and I deposit it the same day. The new parking policies are published the following week, a 3-page document that outlines exactly what violations warrant a tow, what the appeal process looks like, and how long homeowners have to cure a violation before enforcement action. The document also includes a provision that all enforcement actions must be approved in writing by at least 2 board members, and that all tow authorizations must include the specific violation and the vehicle description. It is not perfect, but it is 1,000 times better than what we had before. Janet moves out of the neighborhood 3 months later, and I hear through the group chat that she sold her townhouse at a loss because she could not wait for the market to improve. I do not feel bad about it. She made her choices, and she has to live with the consequences. The new communications director is a retired teacher named Susan, who sends out a monthly newsletter and actually responds to emails, and the neighborhood feels different now, calmer and less tense. People are still complaining about small things, because that is what HOAs do, but no one is getting ambushed with surprise tows or weaponized enforcement anymore. I run into Tom at the mailbox cluster one Saturday morning, and he stops to talk. "I wanted to thank you again," he says. "That audit saved this HOA from a lawsuit." I shrug. "I just did what anyone would do," I say. Tom shakes his head. "No," he says. "Most people would have paid the fee and moved on. You fought back, and you did it the right way." We talk for a few more minutes about the new policies and the upcoming budget meeting, and then we go our separate ways. I walk back to my townhouse with my mail under my arm, and I think about everything that happened. The tow truck and the blank authorization form, and the drone footage, and the meeting room confrontation. It was exhausting and stressful and expensive, but it was worth it, because now the HOA has to follow its own rules, and that is all I ever wanted. The funny karma moment comes a month later when I am walking past the visitor lot and I see a tow truck backing up to a car with expired tags. The driver is looping the strap under the bumper, and I stop to watch. A woman comes running out of a nearby townhouse, waving her arms and shouting, and I recognize her as one of the people who defended Janet at the first meeting. She is yelling at the driver, demanding to see the authorization, and the driver pulls out a printed form with 2 board signatures and a detailed violation description. The woman reads it and her face goes pale, and she pulls out her phone like she is going to call someone. The driver shrugs and keeps working, and I walk past without saying anything, because the new system is working exactly the way it should. The woman sees me and yells, "This is your fault," and I stop and turn around. "No," I say. "This is accountability." She does not have a response, and I keep walking. I get home and sit on my patio with a cup of coffee, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The HOA is not perfect, and it probably never will be, but it is functional now, and that is enough. I think about the police incident number that I never had to use in the meeting, the trump card that stayed in my pocket because the drone footage and the blank authorization form were enough to win. I acted like I was backing down because timing was the whole weapon, and I emailed the proof to every homeowner right before the meeting so Janet walked into an ambush. She never had a chance once the evidence went public, and that is exactly how I wanted it to go. The next board election is in 6 months, and Marcus has already said he is running for a seat. I told him I would support him, and I meant it. The neighborhood needs people who care about transparency and fairness, not people who use the rules as weapons. I finish my coffee and go inside, and I look at the folder of documents still sitting on my kitchen table, the drone footage and the screenshots and the police report, and the tow contract. I should probably file it away, but I leave it there for now, a reminder that paper trails matter, and that sometimes the only way to beat a bully is to document everything and wait for the right moment to strike. "I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink," Janet said. And I remember that line every time I see a new HOA email in my inbox. She was wrong, because I never ran out of ink, and I never ran out of patience. I just kept building the case, one document at a time, until the weight of the evidence was too much for her to ignore. And when the moment came, when the tow truck showed up, and the driver started looping the strap under my bumper. I was ready. I had the permit in my hand, the footage on my phone, and the trump card in my pocket. She thought she could bury me, but all she did was bury herself. The neighborhood is quiet tonight. The kind of quiet that comes when people feel safe in their own homes, and I know I played a small part in making that happen. The HOA still sends out notices and collects fees and holds meetings, but now there is a process, and there are checks and balances, and there is accountability. It is not perfect, but it is better, and sometimes better is all you can ask for. Keep your paper trail close, and I will see you next time.